Hello, my name's Houston, and this is Media Mood Board. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into cozy, post-apocalyptic fables.
We'll be looking at 3 pieces of media across 3 different disciplines, 1 book, 1 game, 1 movie, which all fall under the same niche, to see how they communicate with each other and what they can tell us about the genre. A Psalm for the Wild-Bult. Hugo Award winner Becky Chambers' novella about a monk in the distant future who trades in his role as a monastery gardener for a nomadic life manning a traveling tea cart where he brews and serves bespoke blends of tea to help people with their problems. Scavenger Studios' Season, A Letter to the Future, a magical realist biking sim about journaling. Season follows Estelle, who leaves her mountaintop village for the first time to document a community living in the valley below, which is about to be decimated by an incoming flood. And Studio Ghibli's Nausicaä and the Valley of the Wind, which envisions a future of poison-spewing forests and giant bugs 1,000 years after a terrible war, where the young princess of one of the remaining human settlements tries to find peace between the people of her world and their toxic, unfriendly environment. Each of these takes place in a world being reclaimed by nature after the decline of man, uses simplified language to tell a transparently moral story, and they're all cozy. I know Nausicaä, especially for a Studio Ghibli movie, is low on the coziness scale as far as what someone would naturally go to, but let me explain myself.
Water. Should we run or something?
Oh, wow. This is the moment the war ended. The valley absorbs everything.
3 worlds are baked into the premise of any post-apocalyptic story. There's the pre-event world, the world of the event, and then the post-event world. A lot of post-apocalyptic stories are uncomfortable, animalistic, nomadic, and the author utilizes our built-in knowledge of how things are supposed to work to make us feel weird when we see that it's no longer the case in this world. This is why, while of course you could make up an entirely new culture from scratch, create an event which destabilizes that, and then document how much the world has changed, many popular post-apocalyptic stories have a pre-event world that is more or less just like our own. There's a rule of thumb in writing that you have a higher likelihood for a story's inciting incident to effectively pull in the audience if you first establish what normal is before you throw your character off their routine. It lets the audience feel the stakes. It's both easier and cleaner to defamiliarize a world we're already familiar with than it is to build an entirely new culture from scratch only to subvert it. Much like in the selections we're looking at today, many post-apocalyptic stories are very interested in exploring theoretical ramifications of things in our own world in their fictional one. Psalm for the Wild-Bult takes place on a distant moon long inhabited by humans who have scattershot settlements across a moon with the topography of the PNW. The world used to be extremely industrial until its assembly line robots became sentient, and humanity moved away from using machinery as they saw it as immoral to continue using them. Immorality plays a big role in post-apocalyptic stories, which generally feel backdropped by a moral tale. The event which caused the world to change in the first place is more often than not due to man's hubris, and the resulting apocalypse is seen as a fall from grace. Rarely does an apocalyptic event enhance humanity's place in the world in these kind of stories. It generally finds man, once using the earth however they pleased, demoted to just another animal trying to survive.
Sound cozy yet?
Many small creatures have wonderful intelligences. Very different from yours or mine, of course, but just wonderful. Sophisticated in their own way. If you watch a nest of ants for a while, you'll see them react to all sorts of stimuli. Food, threats, obstacles. They make choices, decisions. It's incredibly logical. Strict, as you say. Food good, other ants bad. Your brain, the human brain, started out as a food good, other apes bad mechanism. You still have those root functions deep down in there, But you are so much more than that. To distill you down to what you grew out of would be like... It searched for an example.
Nature is always reclaiming the earth in these stories. Trees are always much more adaptable than humans are, and I've noticed through these 3 selections the real power that tactility has on stories like these. Nature is not something to be conquered or mastered in these worlds. You must find the humbleness to learn how to live with it, or you risk being consumed by it. The more you can feel the sand underneath your fingernails or the tall grass against your leg, the more that overwhelming sense of inevitable oneness comes across. To further drive home the more spiritual aspects of the genre, these 3 pieces utilize the simple, easily decoded language of fables and children's stories. In Psalm, a robot plainly asks rhetorical, philosophical questions under the guise of a robotic lack of subtlety. In Season, after showing someone a picture you took of their art, they realize that memories are more important than objects. In Nausicaä, we have moments like this.
Quite spirited. Apparently he didn't inhale too much of the jungle's poison. Better not touch him. Even the babies are vicious.
Come on. It's okay.
Careful.
There's nothing to fear. Nothing to fear. See? Nothing to fear. Right? You were just a little scared, weren't you?
Season's world seems to be in a constant cycle of apocalypse and rebirth. History in this world is broken up not in years or eras, but into seasons. Think like Game of Thrones, like where they had really long summers or winters. The season previous to the story we take part in was defined by war. The current one, peace. When a new season begins, every inhabitant contracts a sickness that causes their memories to disappear. Like Psalm, the inhabitants of the world are spread out in remote villages, and the world itself is reclaimed by nature. In part because the ways that man learned to control nature were forgotten each season. The iconography of the everyday is placed in this game to give us a sense of familiarity to understand the seasons before. Construction cranes litter the sky. Orange cones block your progress down a road. You have a tape recorder, and most importantly, you ride a bike. I love the bike in this game. You can walk around on foot all you want as you explore the village and the valley, but the best way to get around is this little dude. You pedal a bike by alternating the left and right shoulder triggers, and every time you try and get the bike up to speed, the first few pedals take a lot of pressure to pull those triggers. After you get up to speed, there's almost no pushback at all. It's so smooth. This feedback ties you to the tactility of the earth even more. You're literally having to push off of it. Both Psalms and Seasons deal with the main characters involved in the act of familiarizing themselves with their surrounding. In Psalms, sibling Dex is at his new job as a tea monk and is traveling to places far beyond the reach of his life in the monastery to learn this skill. In Season, Estelle, also from a monastery of sorts, has tasked herself explicitly with journaling, with taking pictures of, with making field recordings of, this community that's about to disappear. This is a really easy in for an audience. We also don't know about the world, so having a main character that's discovering it along with us is a super effective tool. Nausicaä takes the opposite of that approach. Our main character is maybe the most knowledgeable of anyone about the environment we find ourselves in, even if she has a childlike optimism. Nausicaä takes place 1,000 years after a terrible war, where pollution has caused the forests to turn toxic and giant bugs to overrun the landscape. This is another story with humans living in scattered villages. Everyone has to wear masks when they go outside the village, and if a plant spore from a nearby forest lands in a village, if it's not burned off promptly, the entire area is doomed, and the people have to find a new place to live. Nausicaä, unlike everyone else we meet, is sympathetic to her environment. The bugs and poison forests that plague the other people of the world are the objects of Nausicaä's sympathies. So in Nausicaä, instead of a focus of exploring the world in its details, with kind of an incidental inclusion of the way people are reacting to it, we see the focus of reaction to environment as the emotional drive. As I was doing research for this, I came across this really interesting essay by David Roy and Linda Goodhue about the Dharma of Miyazaki. In reference to Nausicaä, they say, the central problem with Nausicaä is not evil, but what Buddhism calls the 3 roots of evil: greed, ill will, and the delusion of self. They argue that Nausicaa's core deals with the different ways that people deal with insecurity in the world, the way people respond to the basic human need for security. whether it be to try and bend the world to their will to prevent insecurity, or to open themselves up to the possibility of having a fuzzier border between themselves and the rest of the world. Nausicaä, a movie about giant bugs, is not really top of mind when it comes to anything cozy, but I really feel that it squarely fits within the genre and uses the same language, just recontextualized. The movie challenges us to feel sympathy for something we already have a built-in negative opinion of, playing with the post-apocalyptic storytelling tool of defamiliarization. Coziness is such a sought-after but vague term. A lot of cozy content is held up as anti-plot and anti-conflict, but I push back on that, at least in the context of the selections we're looking at today. Coziness it's a hypnosis. It's white noise, it's ceiling fans, it's rain. All those things help people sleep, not because they eliminate noise, but because they eliminate erratic punctuations. It's about rhythm. It's about shaving off the extremes. It's a compressor. When the conflict of a story is white noised down to addressing greed, ill will, and the delusion of self, we may be able to interact with an engaging story without it feeling stressful, even if the situation itself should normally do so. In Psalm, we see our main character transition from being a gardener to a tea monk. We see them succeed at being a gardener. We see their first attempt at brewing tea and consoling someone, where they fail, and then we immediately time skip to when they are regarded as the most popular tea monk in the area. We don't see them struggle with learning their new skill, though we do return to their insecurity with their job. In Seasons, we're not interested in helping the doomed city. We don't try and convince its inhabitants to leave, and don't try and find anyone's lost memories. We just do our best to document what's happening. In Nausicaä, the question isn't how we survive or how we can win, but how can we better live in harmony with the environment? What themes are cozy stories interested in exploring? When mixed with an apocalyptic setting, at least, it seems a powerful approach is to focus on harmony.
Thank you so much for watching to the end. If you like what you saw, you can subscribe here or follow Media Mood Board on Letterboxd. I'll put a link in the description below for the Letterboxd, as well as the Nausicaä Essay that I referenced earlier. I'll be back next week with another hyper-specific entertainment list. My name is Houston. This is Media Mood Board, and I'll see you next week. Bye!